It was just after midnight again, that familiar restlessness creeping into my mind, gnawing at me like a predator in the dark. I lay there staring up at the ceiling, my eyes tracing the faint lines of the streetlight filtering through the blinds. It had become a nightly ritual, my mind spinning and my body unable to find peace. The clock glowed 2:03 a.m., then 2:10, each minute hanging in the air like a taunt. Time moved relentlessly, but here I was, frozen in place, my thoughts twisting, pulling at me from all sides. Beside me, Amy lay asleep. Her deep breaths filled the silence of the room, but I couldn't escape the feeling that something had changed between us. It wasn't just the tension that had settled between us, but a feeling of distance, an invisible divide that had crept in, quiet and unnoticed until now. Amy's presence should have been a comfort, but lately it felt like a wall. I could no longer find the connection we once had. She slept in her usual unceremonious way, one leg hanging off the side of the bed, an arm sprawled across her pillow, and her hair in a wild tangle. I used to find it endearing, but not anymore. Now it felt like a sign of her emotional distance. Something had changed, and I didn't know what it was. Our marriage had been comfortable, predictable. We'd been together for over 25 years, but in the last month, everything had shifted. I could feel it in the way Amy moved, in the way she looked at me, and most of all, in the way she touched me. At first, I thought it was just a phase, but it was more than that. Her behavior in bed had changed drastically. She was suddenly more adventurous, more intense, almost like a stranger in the bed we'd shared for decades. Where had this sudden desire for excitement come from? It wasn't that I wasn't thrilled. Part of me was. But the abruptness of it, the intensity with which she approached me, raised too many questions. There was something off about it. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was mimicking something, practicing moves she'd seen elsewhere. I couldn't ignore the thought that she was seeing someone else. A friend of mine had joked once, half drunk, that if your partner suddenly becomes a star in bed, you should check their phone. I never took him seriously before, but now that joke haunted me. She had changed in other ways too. New outfits, perfume when she ran errands, and her phone. She never let it out of her sight. She even changed the passcode, locking me out. It felt like a game of cat and mouse, and I was losing. The unease gnawed at me, and I couldn't keep it inside any longer. I turned onto my side, staring at the back of her head, my heart pounding. "Amy," I whispered, my voice barely audible in the quiet room. She didn't answer, but I saw the faintest movement. A twitch maybe, but nothing more. I could feel the distance, the wall she'd built between us. "Amy, come on, I know you're awake. We need to talk." A low groan escaped her, and I could hear her shift, clearly irritated. But I couldn't stop. Not now, not when everything inside me was screaming for answers. "I know you're awake." I pressed louder this time. "You've changed. What's going on? What happened to you? What's going on in your head? Are you seeing someone else?" She turned to face me, her face still half hidden in the pillow. "Chris, not now. I'm tired." "Not now," I shot back, the frustration and confusion in my voice rising. "It's exactly now. You've been different. You've been acting like a stranger. What happened to us? Why are you doing this?" She let out a long, exasperated sigh and flung her arm over her forehead. "Oh my God, Chris, you're being paranoid." I clenched my jaw, the anger simmering beneath the surface. "Paranoid? Do you know how it feels watching you turn into someone I don't even recognize? You're acting like you've been practicing for someone else. I know this isn't just about being open-minded. This is more than that." Her voice was sharp, but low. "Stop. You don't understand." "Then help me understand," I snapped back. "You were disgusted by certain things before. Now you're this. You've changed, and it's like you're testing the waters for someone else. I know something's going on." She rolled over onto her back, clearly annoyed. "You're crazy, Chris. I'm just trying to have some fun. It's not that big of a deal." But it was a big deal. Something inside me snapped. "You think it's fun to lie to me? You think it's fun to betray me?" She sat up, her expression growing colder, her eyes narrowing. I didn't want to hurt you, Chris, but I needed more. You weren't listening. You weren't seeing me. The room felt heavy, the weight of her words pressing down on me. I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came out. Instead, I just stared at her, fighting the surge of emotion that threatened to overwhelm me. She sighed, standing up from the bed and grabbing a pillow off the couch. I can't do this right. Now! I'm going to the guest room. The words felt like a slap in the face. She was running away, and it hurt more than anything she had said. Yeah, go ahead. And don't forget your phone. Maybe one of your friends will text you while you're in there. Her silhouette froze in the doorway, tense, her back to me. You're disgusting, she whispered, voice shaking with anger and something else. Fear, maybe. You'll regret this. I felt a cold chill wash over me as she slammed the guest room door behind her. The house was eerily silent except for the distant sound of her muffled sobs. And there I was, left in the dark, in my own mind, drowning in suspicion and doubt. I could feel the pain creeping up, the betrayal like a heavy weight in my chest. But I couldn't bring myself to go after her. What would I even say? How could I fix something so broken? The night dragged on, the clock ticking away as I lay there, alone with my thoughts, with the fear that our marriage was slipping away, and I couldn't do a thing to stop it. The sun had barely risen when I found myself walking away from the house, still reeling from everything. My mind was heavy with questions I could hardly ask myself, let alone answer. How had everything gotten this far? How had the trust between Amy and me crumbled to such an extent that it seemed like the very foundation of our marriage had been eroded? I didn't know if I would ever find the answers, but I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't something I could fix alone. I didn't want to go back home. Not yet. Not while everything still felt so raw. I needed space. I needed clarity. So I drove aimlessly, my hands clenched tight on the steering wheel. I ended up at a small park by the lake where the world felt a little quieter, a little farther from the storm raging in my chest. The park was deserted at that hour. I sat on one of the benches, the cold air helping to clear my mind, but not enough to settle the tumult inside. I needed to think, to breathe, to stop spinning in this constant circle of anger and betrayal. But nothing seemed to work. After a few hours, I decided to call my best friend, Greg. He had been there for me through the ups and downs of my life, and right now I needed someone who understood me. Hey, Chris, how are you holding up? His voice was comforting, but his words felt hollow, as if he knew there was more to the story that I wasn't saying. Honestly, Greg? I don't know. I feel like I'm losing my mind. I don't even recognize my own life anymore. I ran a hand through my hair, the weight of the conversation heavy in my chest. Want me to come over? We can talk about it. Greg offered. His voice was steady, but I could tell he was worried about me. Yeah, that might be good. I just need to, I don't know, unload. I've got so much in my head and I can't make sense of any of it. All right, I'll be there soon, he said, and the call ended. It wasn't long before Greg arrived at the park. He parked his car a little ways off and walked toward me, hands in his pockets, his expression serious. He'd always been the kind of friend who was there when things got tough, never one to sugarcoat anything. I can tell something's eating at you, Chris. What happened? I took a deep breath, the cold air stinging my lungs. Amy, she's been hiding something. I caught her. I've hired a private investigator. She's been seeing other men behind my back. Greg's face didn't shift much, though his eyebrows furrowed with concern. Shit, man. I'm sorry. That's a lot to take in. It's more than just that, I said, my voice shaking slightly. It's not just the cheating. It's everything that came before, the lies, the distance, the secrecy, the way she completely changed overnight, like she was a different person. I thought I knew her, but now I don't even recognize her anymore. Greg sat down beside me, his gaze softening. Sounds like you've been carrying this for a while. I can't even imagine how much that hurts. I nodded, feeling the weight of his words sink in. And it's not just about Amy. It's about the kids, too. Julie and Kate, they were in on it. They didn't tell me, but they were the ones who suggested the whole open marriage thing to her. They thought it would fix things. They practically gave her permission to go behind my back. Greg looked at me in shock. Your daughters? Yeah, I can't believe it, Greg. They thought they were helping. They thought if I agreed to try something new, maybe Amy wouldn't be so miserable. But now I feel like I've been betrayed by everyone. It wasn't supposed to be like this. We sat in silence for a while, the weight of the situation pressing down on both of us. I wanted to scream, to break something, to understand how this all came crashing down so quickly, but I couldn't. Instead, I just let the stillness of the park settle around me. So what now? Greg asked quietly, breaking the silence. I looked out at the lake, watching the ripples on the water. The reflection of the trees, the sky, everything seemed so serene, so peaceful. And yet, I felt anything but calm. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure that out. Greg placed a hand on my shoulder, offering his support. Whatever you decide, man, you're not alone in this. I'm here for you. Thanks, I muttered, feeling the lump in my throat. It wasn't much, but it meant the world to me. We didn't talk much after that. Instead, I stared out at the water, lost in my thoughts. It felt like my world was falling apart, but somewhere deep down, I knew I couldn't stay stuck in this moment. I had to move forward, even if I didn't know where to go. That evening, after I'd returned home and spent the day mulling over my thoughts, I found myself standing in front of Amy. She was sitting in the living room, her eyes swollen from crying, her face drained of all emotion. I don't even know where to begin, I said, my voice hoarse. You've lied to me? You've betrayed me? And worse, you've betrayed our family. I don't know if I can come back from this. Amy looked up at me, her eyes bloodshot. Chris, please understand. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I was just lost. I felt like I was invisible in our marriage, and I thought this was my only way out. You had a choice. We both did, I said, my voice trembling with frustration. But instead of talking to me, you chose to go behind my back, to turn our marriage into something that was never part of the plan. You didn't just hurt me, Amy, you hurt our family. I know, she whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. I didn't know what else to do. I thought if I could just find some excitement, I would feel alive again. I thought you didn't care. I shook my head, feeling the rage building inside me once again. I cared, Amy, but I didn't know you were this unhappy. You should have come to me first. Instead, you lied. You went behind my back. And now I can't even look at you without feeling disgusted. Amy's voice faltered. Chris, I'm sorry. I don't know what to say anymore. I never wanted to hurt you. I don't think you did. But that doesn't change anything, I replied, my voice hardening. I can't do this anymore. I can't pretend that everything is okay when you've torn our marriage apart. There was a long pause, the tension thick between us. Finally, I spoke again. I'm filing for divorce, Amy. Her face crumpled, the weight of my words hitting her harder than anything else I had said. But instead of pleading, instead of begging for forgiveness, she simply nodded. I understand, she whispered. I just never thought it would come to this. I turned to leave, but as I reached the door, I heard her voice again. Chris, and I'm sorry. The door clicked behind me, and I stood there for a moment, my heart heavy. Everything had changed in an instant, but the worst part was that I had no idea where to go from here. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let her betrayal define me. I would rebuild my life, even if it meant doing it alone. As I walked away from the house, the weight of the future felt overwhelming, but I knew that I had to face it. And somehow, I would survive. It had been a week since I told Amy I was filing for divorce. A week of sleepless nights, bitter arguments, and endless questions that kept circling in my mind. I had already started making arrangements for a lawyer, looking into what would happen next. But nothing felt real. It was like I was moving through a fog, just going through the motions while my world crumbled around me. The house felt emptier without Amy's presence. The laughter of the kids, the sound of footsteps around the kitchen, all of it seemed to have disappeared with the weight of the tension that had taken over. Julie and Kate, my two daughters, had been quiet lately. They didn't ask questions, and I didn't offer any answers. We all knew the elephant in the room, but none of us were ready to confront it directly. It was a Saturday morning when I received a call from my lawyer. My stomach dropped when I saw the number on my phone. Mr. Grant, we've scheduled a mediation session for you and Mrs. Grant next week. The lawyer's voice was calm but firm. I recommend you come prepared. This could be a long process. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my emotions. I understand. Thank you. The call ended, but the pit in my stomach didn't go away. I knew the divorce was inevitable, but a part of me still clung to the hope that things might somehow work out. I wanted to believe that this was just a temporary setback, that Amy and I could rebuild what we once had. But the other part of me, the one that was now scarred by betrayal, knew better. I had to let go. That evening, as the sun began to set, I decided it was time to talk to Julie and Kate. They needed to hear the truth, even if it was hard to say. I gathered them in the living room, the weight of the moment heavy in the air. They both sat on the couch, their faces pale, eyes searching mine for answers they knew were coming. Girl, I started, my voice low. There's no easy way to say this, but things are changing in our family. Your mom and I are getting a divorce. The silence that followed was deafening. Julie, my eldest, was the first to speak. Dad, why? What happened? I looked at her, seeing the hurt in her eyes. Your mom and I, we've had problems for a long time. And while I thought we could work through them, she made choices that I couldn't ignore. She was hiding things from me, and that's not something I can accept. We've tried to fix things, but I can't keep pretending everything's okay. Kate, who had been unusually quiet, spoke up next. But why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you talk to us about it? The question stung. I had wanted to protect them, to shield them from the pain, but now I realized that my silence had hurt them too. I didn't want you to carry the weight of this. I didn't want you to see the arguments, the hurt. But I should have been honest with you sooner. I'm sorry. Julie wiped her eyes, trying to hold back her tears. So what happens now? Are we supposed to choose sides? No, I said quickly, shaking my head. This isn't about sides. This is about making sure you both know that I love you and that you don't have to pick between your mom and me. No matter what happens, I will always be here for you. There was a long pause before Kate spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. Will things ever be the same again? I thought about it for a moment, the weight of her words sinking in. Things won't be the same, but that doesn't mean we won't be okay. We will get through this together. Julie and Kate didn't say anything more. They just sat there, lost in their own thoughts. I knew they had a lot to process, just like I did. But I also knew that this conversation, difficult as it was a necessary step toward healing. After the girls went to bed, I sat alone in the quiet house, staring at the empty space around me. The divorce papers had been filed, the mediation was set, and the future loomed uncertain and heavy. There was no going back. I couldn't unknow what I knew, and I couldn't pretend that everything would be fine. But in that moment, I knew I had to keep moving forward, even if I was terrified. The following week was a blur. Between work, the mediation session looming ahead, and trying to figure out how to navigate this new reality, I felt completely overwhelmed. Amy and I hadn't spoken much since that night. I knew she was struggling too, but I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for her. She had made her choices. Now she had to live with the consequences. The mediation day arrived, and I walked into the office, feeling like a shell of the person I had been just a few months ago. I hadn't wanted things to end like this. I hadn't wanted to be sitting in this sterile office with a lawyer sitting across from me, the cold weight of finality in the air. Amy arrived shortly after, her face tense, her posture stiff. She didn't look at me as she sat down across from me, her lawyer beside her. The silence between us was thick, uncomfortable, but there was no denying that we were here to do one thing: separate. The mediator introduced herself, and we went over the basic details of the divorce: custody arrangements for the kids, the division of assets. It was all very procedural, but it was also painfully real. Every word felt like another piece of the life I thought I would have, slipping through my fingers. As we discussed the terms, I couldn't help but feel the weight of the past few years crashing down on me. There was no fixing this. There was no going back to the way things were. Amy looked over at me for the first time since she had entered the room. Her eyes were red, her face drained of color. "Chris," she said softly, "I never wanted it to end this way. I'm sorry. For everything." I didn't respond immediately. Part of me wanted to say something, anything that would bring closure, but another part of me didn't know what to say. The betrayal was still too fresh. The wounds were still too deep. "I know," I said finally, "but I can't keep living in the past, Amy. I can't keep pretending." The mediator guided us through the rest of the process, and by the end of the day, the terms were set. It wasn't a clean break, but it was a start. A painful one, but a start nonetheless. When the meeting was over, Amy and I left the office in silence, walking in opposite directions. I didn't look back. I couldn't. There was nothing left between us. It had been a month since the mediation, and while the dust had settled somewhat, it still felt like I was living in a house of cards, just waiting for everything to collapse. The divorce was finalized, and I had been spending more time with Julie and Kate, trying to make sure they felt secure. They were resilient, but I could tell they were still carrying a lot of pain. The nights were the hardest for them. They missed the family we used to be. I had always been the type of person who kept everything bottled up inside, never really letting anyone see the cracks. But that wasn't an option anymore. I had to find a way to rebuild, not just for myself, but for my daughters too. I knew that if I didn't focus on them, I would get lost in the darkness. And so, day by day, I tried to rebuild. Slowly. The first step was moving out of the house we had once shared. It wasn't something I had planned on, but Amy had moved in with her new boyfriend shortly after the divorce was finalized. She told me it was the only way for her to feel like she could heal. I didn't say anything, but the resentment inside of me grew. She had made her choices, and now she had to live with them. I found a small apartment just a few blocks away from where the kids went to school. It wasn't much, but it was mine. It was empty when I moved in, the silence almost suffocating. No more laughter, no more arguments, just the quiet hum of my own thoughts. The first few nights were the hardest. I kept finding myself reaching for my phone, wanting to text Amy, to ask how she was doing, to check in with her. But I knew better now. She had moved on, and so had I, whether I was ready for it or not. Julie and Kate took the move in stride, but I could see that they missed having a normal family. It was difficult to explain to them why things had changed, why I couldn't just fix it. But I told them the truth that sometimes, even when you love someone, you can't stay together if things aren't right. It wasn't easy for them to understand, but it was the only way I knew how to explain it. A few weeks after the move, I decided to take a trip with the girls. We went up to the lake, a place we used to go when things were better. The familiar surroundings helped soothe some of the tension, and for a few days it felt like maybe, just maybe, things would be okay. Sitting on the dock that evening, the sun dipping below the horizon, Julie leaned over and whispered, "Dad, do you think Mom's really happy with him?" I didn't know how to answer. The question caught me off guard, and for a moment I just stared out at the water. "I don't know, sweetie," I said finally. "I hope so. But whether she's happy or not, you need to remember that we're your family, and we always will be." Kate nodded, though I could tell she still had a lot of questions. "I just don't get it," she said. "Why did she leave us?" I took a deep breath. It wasn't a question I had an easy answer to. Sometimes people make choices we don't understand. But that doesn't mean we stop being a family. We just change. And we move forward. Julie and Kate didn't push the issue any further. They seemed to accept my answer, even if they didn't fully understand it. The rest of the trip passed quietly, and I realized something important. Maybe I didn't have all the answers, but I was doing my best. And sometimes that was all I could do. When I returned to my apartment, I felt a shift inside of me. For the first time in months, I started to believe that maybe I could find happiness again. Not the same kind of happiness I'd had before, but a different kind, one that was built on my own terms. I'd spent so much time mourning what I had lost that I had forgotten to look forward to what was still to come. I started seeing a therapist. At first, I went because I thought I had to, because I didn't want to fall apart in front of my kids. But slowly, I began to understand myself better. I had spent years being the kind of person who avoided pain, who pushed emotions aside because they were too hard to deal with. But now I was facing it all head on. And it was hard. It was really hard. Amy reached out a couple of times after I moved out, sending texts asking how the girls were doing. Part of me wanted to lash out, to tell her everything I'd been feeling, but I resisted. There was no point in dragging up the past. We had both made our choices. Now it was time to live with them. The more I focused on myself, on my own healing, the easier it became to let go of the bitterness that had consumed me for so long. I began to rediscover things that brought me joy: writing, hiking, spending time with my daughters, and just being present in the moment. I had lost a lot, but I realized that I still had a future to build. About 6 months after the divorce, I took a step that felt monumental. I reconnected with old friends, people I hadn't spoken to in years, but who had always been there for me before everything had fallen apart. I started going out for dinners, attending social events, and slowly rebuilding the connections I had lost during the chaos of my marriage. I wasn't looking for a new relationship. I wasn't ready for that. But I needed to be around people who reminded me that I wasn't defined by the failure of my marriage. It was at one of those dinners that I met Claire. She was funny, sharp, and easy to talk to. We started chatting, and I found myself laughing for the first time in a long time. I wasn't looking for a relationship, but I couldn't deny the connection I felt with her. Over the next few months, we saw each other occasionally. It wasn't serious, but it was refreshing to be around someone who wasn't tied to the past, who saw me as I was now, not as who I had been in my marriage. As the months went on, I became more comfortable with the idea of moving forward. I had done the hard work of healing, of accepting that my marriage was over, and I was learning how to live with the pain. But I was also learning how to let go and embrace the possibility of new beginnings. As time passed, the pieces of my life slowly started to fall into place. My relationship with Julie and Kate grew stronger, and I became more present for them, showing them that love and family could still thrive, even after everything had changed. Claire and I continued to see each other, taking things one step at a time, and I found myself rediscovering what it meant to truly connect with someone without the weight of past regrets hanging over me. Life wasn't perfect, and it never would be, but I had learned something invaluable. Healing takes time, and happiness isn't always found in the way we expect it. Sometimes it's found in small moments: laughter shared with loved ones, quiet nights at the lake, and the realization that you can start over, even when it feels impossible. And that was enough.